You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Challenge us at Wexford Insurances 0818 31 30 30.
My first guest this morning is Fergus Flanagan from Fergus Flanagan Architects based in Wexford Town. Before we discuss the world of architecture, I'd like you to start by giving me some background information about yourself, please.
Well, I'm originally from Dublin. I finished up there as an architectural technician, and I moved across to Germany, where I gained invaluable experience and worked with some of the best architects over there. So I suppose from there I sort of moved on to the UK, and that's when I studied architecture in full. So from there I married a Welsh girl, and very, very happy, and we've got three daughters living in Blackwater, and that was part of the deal of coming home. I had to she'd come back to Ireland if I could live as close to Wales as possible, but we're very, very happy living in Blackwater, and we love living in Wexford. But I slowly made my way back home to Ireland. Worked in Dublin, so that's I suppose in a nutshell that's where I am, and I suppose that's who I am.
When you returned to Ireland, let's say to live in Blackwater and Wexford, did you get a job with an architectural practice when you came back?
Yeah, again, it was just the Celtic Tiger was kicking off, so getting a job at that time wasn't a problem. I got a job in Wicklow with the idea that I was going to be doing work in Dublin and decent sized projects, and it worked out for a year, and then I got headhunted to run or help run an architectural practice in Wexford. So it was brilliant because again I didn't have to do all the travelling, and I was able to work in sort of my new home county. And it was good. It was really, really good. But again, in those times, it wasn't like today. You literally could walk yourself into a job, you know. And
when did you make the decision to become self-employed?
It was 2008. I decided I was being offered a share in the company I was working with. We did fairly well. We built it up from 6 staff up to about 18, and I was offered a share into the company. And obviously there was a financial part to it where I'd have to contribute some money in relation to that. And the times were just beginning. You could see cracks in the economy at the time, and I just thought it was too risky to be putting money into some other company rather than thrown into myself. And I suppose one of the things for me was, if you believe in what you do and you believe in your ability, then go for it. And for me that was the crossroads. I had to make a decision, and to be honest with you, I'm glad I made the decision when I did.
So you took the leap to become self-employed in April 2008. Did you see at that stage that the recession was on its way?
I did. I could see the cracks were coming. The bigger jobs are slowing down. People are finding it a little bit hard to get money out of the banks. All the news began to turn negative on the radio. We are having talks of house prices beginning to drop, and that was the initial point. That was the starting point. But
over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a decimation coming across the entire construction industry. I know that the architectural industry has been hit as bad. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's been decimated. We were told you were going to get a soft landing. This landing never came. Literally, we're at a situation where 1 in every 2 architects are unemployed. People have had to sell their homes, everything, and go down to Australia, Canada. A lot of the newer guys, the younger guys, had to literally jump on a plane. There was nothing, and even there was guys who couldn't even get work experience. That's how bad it got. And it was literally, I suppose, in some respects, the bigger you were, the harder you fell, because when these big developers suddenly hadn't got the finances, the architects firms were certainly owed considerable sums at the time, but the whole industry is decimated, absolutely decimated.
Tell me, did you find out the work was coming from the domestic or the commercial market when you started off?
Yeah, it was an interesting one, because when I first started off, there were plenty of people who wanted to build houses, and I still think there are today. The difference was, as the years went on, the banks got tighter and tighter, and the money wasn't there, from the bank's perspective. And we started to see a large decline in the larger scale jobs. So the budgets became more modest, and the projects, became extensions and one-off houses. The commercial market lasted about a year, maybe a year and a half, from 2008, and literally died a death. So you had to look for different markets. And one of the things I worked in over the last couple of years was we got into designing schools and extensions and doing bits and pieces with schools. And again, it's about thinking outside the box. So one of the things that I was able to approach a lot of head teachers with is the idea of creating a master plan for their school. So when they get these little chunks of money, rather than, you know, building a classroom and then realizing a couple of years later they have to knock it down, they could actually have a master plan and build to the master plan. So no wastage was ever done. And again, we could design heating systems and things like that that would cater for expansions of the school. So sometimes these things offer you an opportunity, Karl, you know, when you have to think outside the box. And as an architect, that's what they train us to do.
Great. And apart from schools, has there been many other government contracts come up over the last number of years?
To be honest with you, the problem I have found, and maybe I'm not saying that this is across the board, but the problem I've found with the government contracts is the amount of paperwork that you have to do and the commitment that you have to put into doing them. And at the end of the day, you may not get them, you know, and you may not get them for other reasons apart from your price or whatever, you know. So to be honest with you, at this stage I decided to try and stay away from them and concentrate in other sectors and other areas where I could see an immediate return rather than in the hope of something coming out of something.
And from that perspective, where are the opportunities in the architectural world today?
Well, we're beginning to see the banks turn the tap back on, and they actually have. I think the problem now is convincing the public that they've actually turned the tap on. And we hear from a lot of people that they're not even going near the banks because they're not loaning money out. So, but we're seeing it again frontline. We are actually seeing them loan money out, especially to first-time buyers or people who want extensions, renovations. So that's beginning to change. We're seeing the change now. We're seeing people walk through the door. We're seeing people who came to us 2 years ago and said now they have the finance. So that has fundamentally changed, and that's fantastic because you can't have a construction industry without the banks being involved in this thing. So that's certainly one market. The commercial market's still low, but if we look at other sectors, the computer market in this country is huge and it's growing, and a lot of our clients are actually in that sector. So there are still sectors in the country that are growing, and I suppose it's really to sort of tailor your direction towards them and follow them up, really,
There's lots of students across County Wexford today that are currently studying architecture, and I suppose they're fearful for their future in terms of when they do finish their college degree in architecture, what's going to happen next. What advice would you give to those?
I suppose I was in that boat at one time. When I left Ireland, there was 22% unemployment, and the Berlin Wall came down. And that was it. I didn't have a choice, but it was a great experience. I got to learn how to speak German, and I'd see this as an opportunity for a lot of guys. Get some experience if you can, even if you got to work for free. I did when I was young. And get out there and don't be afraid to travel, because Ireland's always going to be here and it'll come back. And it is beginning to come back now. So I'd say, look, if you're young, don't be afraid about going abroad. Get your studies, get your pieces of paper behind you. Work for someone. If you can't do it, just do it for free. Get some sort of experience behind you and get abroad. Enjoy yourself and, come back home with lots of knowledge and new ways of doing things. And again, when you go abroad, you can take little gems of knowledge back to Ireland, and I think Ireland will be a better place for it. So I'm not actually that worried about the young people of Ireland.
Fergus, lots of business owners that I speak to that are providing construction related services are telling me that the grey market is quite strong, in that the over 65 market. Lots of people have come to retirement age over the last number of years from the civil service. And do you find in your own sector that they're spending money on, let's say, house renovations or extensions at this stage?
That's an interesting point. Yes, we do a lot of shows, and we get to see a lot of the macro sort of sector of Ireland in terms of every sort of person within it. Yes, we do is the answer to that, Karl. In short, we do quite a few of the percentage of our work is for that sort of sector. However, I'm not so sure that the grey sector basically is purely because of their age. It's generally speaking because they're the only people with money left. They haven't been foolish enough to invest in banks. Hopefully they haven't, and they didn't get caught out in the Celtic Tiger. But they certainly are a huge part of the market at this stage, and I honestly think it's because they're the few people who have any money left in the country. And again, you do have to approach them differently. We certainly do. They are. Everything we do is in 3D, and we explain things, and we make sure that they're fully confident in moving forward with the project, and they're confident about the budget, they can commit to something. So I think, you have to be, you know, a little bit more sensitive and careful with that sector. But no, there certainly is a huge demand out there in relation to people doing something to their house and, you know, getting their you know, pensions and things like that, and realising that they can actually just get their house done up the way they want it at this stage. And there's great value out there, and I think that's the main thing as well. There is fantastic value out there in terms of getting anything built at this stage.
I know that, you know, over the last number of years, lots of architectural firms have gone out of business, which I suppose in its own right creates an opportunity for yourself. What's your outlook for the next 3 to 5 years in the architectural sector?
I'm actually very optimistic. We've been lucky that, you know, our approach over the last 5 years basically has loaned us to create people who are now giving us referrals, that we've done business with people, and I think it takes a good few years to build up that reputation, and now we have it. So the banks loaning money is a huge factor. It started to happen, and that again will fundamentally change things. We're seeing it now, so they're going to see it next year. So I'm very, very optimistic.
That's certainly very encouraging to hear, Fergus. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you continued success with growing your business.
You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Think Wexford Insurances for your business insurance.